Well, thank you everybody for coming. As you know, this is tax day. We just finished a, I think, at least 2.5-hour hearing in the Finance Committee with the CEO of the IRS, Frank Bisignano, and had an incredible report by him. And although there's a lot of politics going around tax season, the reality is this is one of the best and smoothest and most effective tax seasons that we've had. Even though they were implementing the One Big Beautiful, Working Families Tax Cut Act, and adding these new tax policies that I'm going to reference and doing the regulatory implementation of them. They did it all. And I just want to say at the outset, I'm really proud of Frank Bisignano and his team at the IRS for the great job that they've done. So the Working Families Tax Cut Act prevented more than a $4 trillion tax hike. You remember that whole debate during the reconciliation bill. It was a $4.3 trillion tax hike that was coming. We also added, as you know, a number of taxes which are referenced here, and I'll go over them quickly in a little detail, that now have been analyzed well enough to know that as of now, they have resulted in $600 billion plus, going to $700 billion, at least it's getting close to that now, of new tax relief for American people. And of these new taxes, at least the largest proportional group getting the benefit of these is people making less than $50,000. And they have been focused on people in that zone. So let me go over that just a little bit. You can see it on the chart here. The average refund size is over $3,400. That's an 11% increase so far. The no tax on overtime has had 25 million people engaged in it. And the no tax on tips, 6 million people have claimed it. The seniors deduction is up to 30 million people claiming it. I believe that something like 80% of the seniors on Social Security can qualify for this tax relief. And the tax relief for the seniors, just as an example, is about a $7,200 deduction. So these are big deals. And then finally, the Trump accounts, there's 5 million of them that have been created so far. About 1.2 million of them qualify for the $1,000 tax contribution. And the bottom line here is that we have a phenomenally increased boost from tax relief coming from the Working Families Tax Cut Act that are now showing in the tax season, the tax filing season. And you'll remember the law also restored and made permanent the 3 or 4 critical business taxes that have assured that we will get capital formation, jobs, new businesses, new workers, and higher wages in our economy. And the reminder on those, that was permanent R&D deduction, the 199A small business deduction, the other pro-growth job reinvestment of capital in new equipment, new workers, and workers, makes it so that we have a phenomenal boost outside of the individual part of the tax code, which is generating that capital formation that it drives the growth in our economy. All of these things are working. Filing season may be ending, but the benefits of the Working Families Tax Cut are not. They're just starting to prove as they roll out. And with that, I'd now like to turn to Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Senator Crapo. This season, Americans are seeing more money come back to them. So more of your money is coming back to you because of the Working Families Tax Cut that we did earlier this year, last year. In President Trump's first term, in 2017, for many years I'd been working on a paid family medical leave. And it was a tax credit that we were proposing. We were able to get that as a pilot program in the 2017 reconciliation that we did, thanks to Senator Crapo and many others who were on the Finance Committee at that time, Senator Hatch, Senator Cornyn, Senator Portman were champions of getting that in. But it was in as just a pilot program. We wanted to make sure that we could make it more attractive, basically, honestly. We wanted businesses to feel confidence that this was a program that was going to continue. And so, working with Senator Crapo, the Finance Committee, and with Republicans, we were able to make this permanent. This is a big deal. In 2017, the paid family medical leave was the first time you had those words in federal law. And it was a Republican Congress that got it done. Well, now we have a permanent program for paid family medical leave. Again, the first time in federal law that we have those words, that we have a program that addresses the needs of families. This is a tax credit for businesses so that they can offer their employees paid family medical leave, so their employees can take time off to meet the needs of taking care of their families. We are really planning on pushing this forward now, because I know many businesses, they did want that certainty of a permanent tax credit so they could make those investments in their employees, so they could be able to help their employees care for their families. What this tax credit does, it exactly meets what the Working Families Tax Cut set out to achieve. And that's common sense policies that reward work in this country, that put taxpayer dollars to work for those who pay their share. So I'm just really proud to have that one portion of this great tax package that we were able to get done for the American people. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Senator Blackburn.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to you all for paying attention on this tax day to the people that really matter, and that is the men and women across this country that are filing that return, and they're sending money to Washington, D.C., hard-earned money. And what they expect is that we are going to be good stewards of that money, and that we are going to give them the opportunity to keep more of their hard-earned money, not less. Now, every single Democrat in the Senate took the opportunity to vote no on all of these provisions that you're going to hear about today. Everything we are talking about, they voted no. They voted for more taxes. They voted for more government control. They voted for less individual freedom in the choices they made. Now, one of the provisions I've worked on for years made it into this bill, and it was how do we remove federal income tax from Social Security for our nation's seniors. And we were able to do that. The $6,000 enhanced bonus deduction that is in this bill removes the federal income tax from Social Security for 88% of our nation's seniors. That is $6,000 per individual. So, for a couple where each of them are over 65 years of age, that is $12,000 in deductions. That is significant. That is money in their pocket for gas, for groceries, for tending to grandkids, and the things that they want to do. It reduces their tax burden. That is a good thing. And we were so pleased to see that in there. Now, Senator Britt, Senator Fisher, and I have spent a lot of time working on how tax policy affects families. One of the things that I was able to push through is a tax credit, a credit for employers that provide child care for their employees. When you talk about Tennessee and 93% of our jobs are small business jobs, extending this to small businesses so they can pool together resources with other small businesses and work with the local church that does Mother's Day out, provide child care for families so they know their children are safe, they're secure, they are in an environment where they're going to be loved on during the day, and mom and dad can work and not worry. That is so vitally important. Those are some of the wins that Republicans brought forward, and as I remind you, every single Democrat voted no. So, if you're a senior taking that deduction, I want you to remember that. Republicans brought this to you. President Donald Trump brought this to you. But every Democrat voted against you and your pocketbook.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marcia. And next, Senator Marino.
Well, if you've looked around the halls of Congress today, you realize the Democrats are smiling a little bit more, not as much as they usually do, because April 15th to them is their religious holiday. They love nothing more than confiscating money from Americans, maybe almost as much as illegal migrants. It's maybe a tie. So they're a little bit less happy than they would have been thanks to Republicans and President Trump's leadership to pass this working families tax cuts. But the real message is this. Let's have a contrast. Republicans right now control the levers of power here in Washington, D.C., the House, the Senate, and the White House. It wasn't too long ago when the Democrats said, so what did they do when they had the opportunity to deliver for working families? Here, I'll give you an example in the automobile business. What they did is passed a $7,500 credit that would go directly into the hands of the wealthiest Americans to buy mostly imported luxury vehicles. You heard that right. 250,000 people a year took advantage of a $7,500 incentive that they then leased cars like Rolls Royces, Lamborghinis, Porsches, Mercedes, because in that bill they put a loophole that allowed that incentive to apply to leases. 250,000 wealthy Americans got $7,500 a year. That was the Democrats in charge. What did Republicans do? We put in place a tax deduction for working Americans, people making less than $200,000 a year, that if they finance an American-made automobile, not a foreign automobile, they could deduct that interest. We've had 1.25 million working Americans that have put about $1,000 in their pocket as a result of just that narrow deduction. 5 times as many people, working Americans, took advantage of this opportunity. And let me just say this to you. $7,500 to somebody who can afford a Mercedes or a Rolls Royce is nothing. It was money wasted, totally destroyed. $1,000 in the hands of a working American that was struggling under Joe Biden's inflation is a meaningful deduction. And then when you add all these things up, we delivered for working Americans. And I'll just end with this. I used to remember a Democrat Party that cared about working Americans, that focused on advancing the interests of working Americans. That party is now the party of illegal migrants, transgender surgeries on children, and men and women's sports. They are completely lost. Fortunately, Republicans have stayed true to our focus. Low taxes, low regulation, small government, but added a critical component, which is a laser focus on helping the men and women who build this country every day. And I am so proud of the fact that it took only Republicans to get this bill across the finish line, and we delivered for working families. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie. And next we have Senator Moody.
Thank you so much, our fearless leader, the chairman of an often thankless role of the Finance Committee. My name is Ashley Moody. I'm one of the newest United States Senators. I hail from the great free state of Florida. And I am sure that over the last year, as President Trump and those of us in leadership have uncovered incredibly wasteful, fraudulent, and yes, criminal spending on with your taxpayer dollars, that many of you that work incredibly hard to support your families, and yes, sometimes give up time with your families to work extra time to support your families, were aghast that your taxpayer dollars were being spent that way. In fact, I think it's incredible, as I've watched sanctuary states, sanctuary cities spend your taxpayer money going to programs that never should have existed to protect those in your communities that were committing crimes. Yet they refuse to work with the federal government to make sure they didn't criminalize and run havoc within your towns. I, for one, want to make sure that these people standing behind me, and certainly this administration, is given credit for going back and trying to root out some of that wasteful spending, and by golly, make sure that you can keep that money in your pocket so that it's not going to those that shouldn't even be here. And as you discovered more and more that so much of this money was ending up in the hands of those that were not even in the country legally, we've got to go back and not only fix that wrong, but make sure you know that we have our lens set right, meaning the decisions we're making, the policies decisions we're making are how do we protect this country? How do we strengthen our communities? How do we respect the American citizen who sent us here on their behalf? And how do we make that our first priority when we're making decisions? And this is a great example. The Working Families Tax Cut Act shows the American people that we've got their backs, that we don't expect you to go and work hard, take time away from your families to support your families, and then take your money and put it into places it should never be or to people who should never receive it. That is wrong, and that stops with this administration, and that stops with this leadership. I was so proud in my first year as a United States Senator to back legislation that said no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. And let me tell you what that does for my home state. We are now the #1 state in the amount of tax refunds. Floridians will get the largest refunds on average of any other state in the nation. That's real results. That's getting up here with the right purpose, the right mission, the right people in mind that you're representing, and getting things done. That will not only strengthen our families, that will strengthen this nation. And I am so proud of the leadership here in the Senate and President Trump for making sure that we delivered on those promises. So I appreciate you guys being here today to pay attention to this important message on an important day that's really a solemn one for American citizens. We want to step up and do right by our country. We want to pay our dues, but we want to make sure that those in office are treating those dues with respect and with stewardship and with integrity. We demand that as an American people, and I can assure you those people standing up with me today will make sure that happens. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley. And before we go to Roger and Katie, I just have to say this. My staff said I shouldn't bring this up, but I'm going to.
That's good.
And that is, as you know, we had a big battle over current policy and current law. What you may or may not have noticed is that CBO did score this bill under current policy. And when you score it in the right way, with the right baseline, it generated a $400 billion deficit decrease in spending. And this is what prompted me to say this. It generated $1.6 trillion of elimination of wasteful and fraudulent spending in the entitlement system. And it truly was waste and fraud, and we can get into the details on that if you'd like to ask about it. Oh, yes, and next is Senator Marshall.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chairman Crapo. I want to say thanks for reminding me of the Trump accounts. We have a new granddaughter in the Marshall family, and look forward to opening that account for her. As a first-generation college student, one of my goals is that all my grandchildren could have that opportunity to go to college as well, and maybe I'll talk to Grandma and see if she'll let us take this year's tax refund and maybe add to that Trump account as well. So that's great. That's great financial advice for everybody, for every grandparent especially. But as you all know, today's tax day. Traditionally, this day is the day that most Americans dread what they owe the government. But this year, we're here to celebrate tax day, what the government is finally giving back, thanks to the working families' tax cuts. Approximately 70% of Americans are receiving tax refunds this year. 70%. An average year, maybe it's about 60%. So some going from 60 to 70% of Americans getting a tax refund is incredible. And when I think about the tax refunds, who's getting them? For hardworking, middle-income families, these refunds are typically in the $2,000 to $4,000 each. Again, that's real money to hardworking families. I spent my life around people who carry a lunch pail to work, nurses on double shifts, oil refinery and factory workers staying late, and Kansas farmers getting up before dawn. Washington has been writing off them for decades, but Republicans didn't. My first job off the farm was working at a cell barn. I was 15 years of age. The rumor is I maybe fibbed about my age, how old I needed to be, but I had an older brother that was working at the cell barn and they needed help. Many weekends we would work, a 12-hour shift was a short day. Oftentimes we worked 24, 30, 36 hours, and of course anything over 8 hours, guess what? We got overtime. So to a 15-year-old kid making $2.30 an hour on a weekend, working 30 hours, I was counting that money already, and I was going to get myself a nice new truck. But then I opened that first check, and the federal government had taken almost half of what I'd made in that overtime. And I'll never forget that. And that's one of the reasons why we passed the Working Family Tax Cuts bill, and why I'm proud to have introduced the Overtime Wages Tax Relief Act. And Chairman, I'm grateful for you giving me the chance to lead that particular portion of it. Workers can deduct up to $12,500 in qualified overtime, $25,000 for married couples. Already now we had 15 million Americans, but I think the commissioner today said over 20 million people have taken advantage of that on their return as well. It is the most popular new cut in the bill, is getting this deduction for overtime. Average refunds are up over 10%. Listen, the money that we save, folks, it's a rent payment, it's a car payment. This is real money to hardworking Americans, but it's their money and they've earned it. I also want to speak to what we did in the Working Family Tax Cuts bill for rural America. Republicans only, I think that's the theme here today, helped farmers with crop insurance. We increased the reference prices and the 20% small business pass-through deduction under 199A, and permanent. Again, it's so important that this is permanent. And then lastly, I would just mention that we delivered the 45Z Clean Fuel Production Tax Credit, rewarding American farmers, turning corn, soybeans, sorghum into biofuels, creating a massive, stable market that lets Kansas farmers not just feed the world, but fuel it too. This bill isn't for Wall Street. It's for Main Street, the hourly worker, the family farm, the working families who built this country. Thank you.
Thank you, and batting cleanup.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, Brett, and then we'll take some questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. A big thank you to Chairman Crapo. His leadership in this was just invaluable. From the very beginning, he had a vision, and the vision was to return more of Americans' hard-earned dollars back to them, knowing they spend it wiser than anybody up here ever could. He delivered on promises President Trump made on the campaign trail, delivered on common sense. You've heard it from every member up here. You heard from Senator Marino about incentivizing people to buy American made. You heard from Senator Marshall about what it would actually mean to be able to not have to pay taxes on that overtime for someone who's just starting out or someone who's trying to provide for their family. You heard from Senator Moody about making sure that we cut wasteful spending, that the fraud and abuse is gone, that we're responsible stewards of those dollars. And you heard from Senator Blackburn, importantly, about what this means to seniors, living on fixed incomes, now being able to have a little bit more, yes, to do for themselves, but to do for their families and to enjoy life to its fullest. I also want to talk a little bit about something that Senator Blackburn mentioned, and I've been proud to work alongside her and for her leadership and Senator Fisher's, and that's making sure that we address the issue of childcare. Affordability and accessibility of childcare is an issue. We've seen that from coast to coast. We've seen that and heard that from our largest manufacturers to our smallest businesses, that they have people who want to come to work, who want to be a part of building back America, but that affordability or accessibility is an impediment to that. So we took a look at the tax code and with Chair Crapo's help said, how can we make this better? How can we make sure that parents who are working to build a family and grow their family have an opportunity to do that? We did that in a couple of different ways. Number one, we took a look at DCAP. DCAP used to be $5,000, and it's been that way, tax deductible for parents since 1986. So for everyone kind of doing a rewind, President Reagan was in office the last time that we touched this. We actually updated that for the very first time with over a 50% increase, now allowing parents to keep $7,500 that they can use importantly in this area. Additionally, we took a look at the CDCTC that hasn't been updated since 2001, increasing that about $900. That is real money for parents, putting that back in their pocket. And since the first time in 2001, we updated 45F. That's where we're taking a look and saying, how can we have a collaboration, public-private partnerships? How can we make sure that everyone has a seat at the table as we work to address this in a responsible way? We know now that businesses, large corporations, have an opportunity to create larger on-site facilities or a voucher program that means something to people who are trying to build their family, trying to figure out how to take care of their children, trying to figure out how to allow them to achieve the American dream. And now also, for the very first time ever, small businesses get to take a part of that as well, pulling their resources up to $600,000. If you think about this, and I've heard Senator Blackburn talk about it, if you think about an industrial park there in rural America that's trying to figure out how do we get workers here and be able to create a sustainable environment where they know their children are being loved, this can do that. How do you take a look at the small businesses on your main street that make our communities thrive, that make Alabama so special? How do you let them work together to actually tackle this issue? This is how we do it. When we look over the years, and last year in particular, we lost 455,000 women from the workforce last year, from January into August of 2025. Look, we know that this affects parents, both men and women, but we know it disproportionately affects women in this. We want to make sure that every person who wants to achieve their American dream through coming and helping us build back America in this way has that opportunity. So I am proud of the work that we have done, Republicans have done. You've heard a lot of people talk about this, Democrats over the years, but Republicans are the ones who took action. Democrats, I want you to know, every single one of these things that you have seen on this list that you've heard my colleagues talk about, Democrats did reconciliation, did they not?
Oh, yeah.
Did they add any of these things
Raised
to
your
it?
taxes.
They raised your taxes through their bite at the apple, the reconciliation. What Republicans have done is given you more of your money. We have said if you are a hard-working person, parent in this country, we want to make you and help you achieve that American dream. Proud of the work that we did. Thank you for the leadership, Chairman Crapo. And we're just getting started. There's a lot more we want to do to make sure that we continue to build back America and implement President Trump's vision of every American being able to achieve their American dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And I would encourage those of you who can to stick around and answer questions. I'm glad that these senators showed up because I think you saw the commitment that they had, the fire in the belly that they had for whatever particular issue was their issue or something that was critical to them. And I know you're staying here.
And then there was one.
And then there's one. But I will tell you, this is what I had to work with when I was chairing the reconciliation bill effort. And that is 53 senators who were all committed not just to the overall objective of protecting the TCJA and not letting a $4.3 trillion tax increase happen, but fighting to improve our tax policy and make it much more focused on those who needed the relief. And so I just want to say thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
You represent the other 51.
That's right. That's right. And guys, we were all coming to him with
Oh, yeah.
all of these different ideas and how do we return Americans' money to them, and we did it.
And there's still stuff that's left
right.
on the cutting
That's
room
right.
floor
We'll
that
get
we
Woody back at
we
it.
still need to get done. But this just shows you what is really happening.